Just trying to give you time to get set up.
Okay.
Alrighty, we're going to get started. As with the last two, you got 2 minutes. Tell us about yourself and why you're running. And I mean, you can take up to 3 or 4 if you'd like.
Okay, great. So my name's Ronnie Morris. I currently serve you guys representing BESE District 6. So BESE District 6 includes East Baton Rouge, Livingston, Ascension, Tangipahoa parishes, in addition to Zachary and Central School Systems. I'm a retired engineer. In the last 2 years of my retirement, I work as a substitute teacher in my BESE district. So I go into middle schools and high schools, and I teach math and science. I really enjoy the education space. It made a difference in my life. I went back to school when I was 30. I taught 1 year of high school calculus and physics before starting my professional career. And then after 25 years, I retired 2 years ago. But I graduated in 5 years by the grace of God as a single parent with 2 little girls. I'm a proud father and grandfather now. I have 5 grandchildren. So I was really blessed with that. Since then, I went back to school in 2017 to get the MBA at LSU, and I'm currently enrolled at Vanderbilt University in the Peabody College, pursuing a doctorate in educational leadership. Serving on BESE, it's been a great experience for me. You just really don't really appreciate how things work until you get into public service, and then it's a mind blower. But it's been a great learning experience, and I hope I have the opportunity to contribute for another 4 years.
You have currently been on BESE for 1 term, correct?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Why did you run for the seat, and why are you running for reelection?
Well, that's sort of an interesting story. When I was approached to run for BESE 4 years ago, I went back to my wife and talked to my wife about it. And her first question was, well, Ronnie, what's BESE? And that's a question I hear all across the state, right? Is what is BESE? Most people don't know BESE is the State Board of Education, basically, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. And BESE basically sets all the rules for K through 12 education. BESE sets the standards, and then every school district has the autonomy to choose the curriculum that satisfies those standards. But in my my discretion, like I said, I work as a substitute teacher. I enjoy working with the kids, and what they told me was, well, now you got a chance to work for 700,000 kids. So there's 700,000 kids in the state that go to public schools. Or they go to schools. 100,000 of those go to non-public schools, and about 20,000 are homeschooled. When I first started at BESE, they told me there are 144,000 students in the state that attend a D or an F school. And I just found that incredible, that, you know, a mom is going to put her child on a bus for 12 years and go to a D or an F school. You know, what kind of outcomes can you possibly expect from something like that? So there's so much opportunity there. Just really felt like could make a difference, and have made some progress. Obviously, we had to get through COVID. Louisiana came out of COVID much better than most of the rest of the country, but we haven't fully recovered yet, and God knows we still have a ways to go. A lot of untapped opportunity in our state, but I'm very optimistic about this next administration, this next BESE, and I think we can make a significant difference.
So we're going to split it up here. We're going to start with the DNNF schools that you were discussing, and many schools around the state have their own struggles for a variety of reasons. Through your first term, as you said, you had to deal with COVID, and coming out of it, you're trying to get going. What are some of the things you're trying to get going to see if you can fix or improve those DNF situations?
Sure. Well, you know, you stop and think about it. We're in the 21st century in the United States of America, but yet 50% of the kids in our schools are not proficient in the English language at grade level in the United States of America in the 21st century. So right now, I say right now, in the last 2 years, two or 3 years, Louisiana has had a focused initiative to address the literacy problem. And so, surprise, surprise, we're going back to phonics. So now we're training our teachers how to teach phonics. So the program requires 50 hours of specific professional development so that our teachers are qualified to teach phonics and reading. And it's paying off. We've seen the benefit of this investment. Louisiana ranked number one. That's Louisiana ranked number one in the country in growth in fourth grade reading. So we're showing a significant improvement, and that's really critical at fourth grade because you're teaching kids to read K through 3, and then 4 through 12 they read to learn. So they don't get, obviously, if they don't get that fundamental foundation, right, to learn to read, well, what are your expectations going forward after that? So I'm very encouraged about this focused investment on literacy and the progress that we've seen. So now we need to sustain that effort. It hasn't been totally implemented across the entire state, so there's quite a bit of work still to do, but we've actually seen that it does work, and so we want to continue networking that initiative. Next on the plate is a similar initiative for math, so that's the next one on the plate. But in my mind, when I think of education, and particularly in the K through 12 space, it's like a three-legged stool. You have to have highly qualified educators. You have to have highly qualified, highly efficient, high quality curriculum, and you have to have highly engaged kids. Okay, so if you look at those three things, then I gave you an example of the high quality curriculum with the focus on literacy, right? So let's look at the other two. 3 years ago, there was a lot of talk about nationwide teacher shortage. So I asked the State Department of Education, well, how bad is it in Louisiana? What's the number? The response I got was, well, Mr. Morris, state law doesn't require us to track that number, and BESE policy doesn't require us to track that number, so we don't really know. But I'd like to know, right? So let's conduct a survey. Let's get that number. Let's take it to our legislators so now they know how bad it is in Louisiana, and they can put the appropriate priority on it as it competes against other initiatives for funding. So they conducted the survey, got the number back. The estimate was 2,500 teachers. So we take that to the legislature. The legislature was able to make some changes so that teachers can now come out of retirement and draw the teacher's salary without taking a hit on their pension. That was one of the biggest steps, and there were a couple of others. So now we come back to the next year, run the survey again. Now the number is 1,250. Okay, so we cut it in half according to the best estimate. I'm looking forward October, BESE, to hearing what the current number is. So we're whittling it away, but we're obviously not there yet. We're going to need a short-term strategy as well as a long-term strategy to address that problem. Short-term, I'm really encouraged by a model that I saw in Calcasieu Parish last year. So Calcasieu Parish developed a really innovative approach in the Lake Charles school system. And I think there are 11 high schools that are in that district. They put them all on the same bell schedule, and they established this hub so that in the hub, you've got the qualified math teacher, you've got the qualified science teacher. There was one lady that was even teaching dance. And so if I'm a student in let's say Barb High School, and I'm going down the hallway, I can go into a classroom over here, put my headphones on, look at my screen, and I can tap into the Algebra 2 class that's being instructed from the hub by a qualified teacher. Whereas normally they wouldn't have the Algebra 2 teacher in the school, and they couldn't offer the class with a qualified educator. Across the room from that student, there's somebody else that's got the headphones on looking at their screen, and they're getting biology. There's somebody else that is getting the dance instruction. So the high school student still gets that high school experience, right? It's not like virtual learning. I'm still going to school. I'm still hanging out with my friends and playing ball and dance and all the other cool high school experiences. It's just that I'm taking advantage of the technology that exists and leveraging that hub so that I get that instruction. So in my mind, that's a really innovative approach to address this problem short term, and working with State Superintendent of Education, Superintendent Brumley and his team, so that we can roll that out across the state, especially in some of these rural areas, and they can take advantage of that concept. So that's 2 out of 3 legs on the stool. The third leg on the stool is engaging kids. So Again, this is on the job training. You learn while you're on this job. And I was in a meeting in EBR on a Saturday with some other volunteers, and I was in a little small breakout group. And one of the staff mentioned that the truancy rate is 35%. Like 35%, must be wrong. What was it last year? Well, it was 34%. Oh. So I took that back to Superintendent Brumley, and I said, well, what's the state average? I like to see 5 years of data pre-COVID. What's the state average? He came back. The state average is 35%. Well, I got two questions. Number one, how is it even possible? Number two, how is it possible and nobody's talking about it? He said, about 10 years ago, there was a budget cut. They cut the budget. They eliminated the position for the person at the state level that oversees truancy. So nobody's been looking at it for 10 years. And you wonder why education is the state it is right now? And the truancy rate is 40% across the state on average. So that's the third leg of the stool is we've got to address the truancy issue. So Superintendent Brumley filled that role. I sat down with that individual. It was a great hire. She's doing a great job. He also created a task force. I'm on that task force. There are a couple of judges on the task force. There's a very representative group that's on the task force. So I'm looking forward to working with that group and addressing this problem. It's really a lot deeper than most people think. What are some of the reasons kids don't go to school now? In the 21st century, whenever I sat down with this individual that's the subject matter expert, she really enlightened me. Kids don't go to school because I can't read. I don't want to be embarrassed, right? Why am I going to go to school? I don't have the cool clothes to wear. Somebody's going to bully me. So and so said something about me on social media, and I don't want to go to school and deal with that. So the things that kids, challenges they face today, unfortunately, those are reasons they don't go to school. So we've got to get to the root cause of some of these problems. We got to get the kids off the street. We got to get them into school. Crime and poverty are the two biggest concerns people in our state have. And everybody, pretty much everybody will tell you that education is the fix. On the crime side, I met with East Baton Rouge District Attorney Hiller Moore several times. He told me in 2019, there were 97 homicides in EBR. 90% of the victims and 90% of the perpetrators didn't finish ninth grade. Okay, didn't finish ninth grade. So you get those kids off the street, get them into school, teach them how to read, right? Some of these fundamental things that we take for granted, and then they have opportunities to see, what their interests are, and they have an opportunity to pursue those interests with passion. When I go into schools and work as a sub, at the high school level particularly, I'll go in and I'll explain to the kids, this is what BESE does. I said, you just got elected to BESE. You can change any rule that's out there. You can create a brand new rule. What are you going to do? Well, I don't like the cell phone policy. I don't like the uniform restriction, and the food in the cafeteria sucks. Okay. Once I get past those three, it's, Mr. Morris, can you find me a teacher? Okay. And then the second thing I get is, Mr. Morris, can you make education relevant? Okay. So what I would say, particularly in Livingston Parish, you guys do a really good job with STEM education. The STEM center that you have here on Range Avenue, it's fantastic. They do a great job here. The kids love it. And then personally, I got my own little nonprofit for 6 years now. We bring STEM aquaponics systems into middle school classrooms. So we circulate about 400 gallons of water in the classroom. The kids feed the fish. The fish waste that's entrained in the system provides the nutrients for the lettuce that they grow downstream. So they learn about water chemistry. They're taking water samples. They're learning how to maintain a system. They harvest the lettuce and they serve it in the school cafeteria. So they're getting the nutritional bang of it also. And they learn how to work together. They learn how to work together in different roles, different responsibilities. They take a lot of pride in the quality of their product. They're serving it in the school cafeteria. And they're learning a lot of really good life skills. But it's something that makes education relevant. So I'm real high on STEM education. I think there's a lot of untapped opportunity there. All these kids, they have one of these, right? So they know what the answer is. We need to help them with the problem solving and the critical thinking skills, right? How'd you get to the answer? Because life after school, that's what it's going to be about, right? Somebody's paying you for how you can solve a problem. The other thing I would share with you, sort of along this line, is I also chair the School Innovation and Turnaround Committee. Okay, so in Louisiana, historically, school innovation and turnaround, that translates to charter school management. Okay, what's working in some areas of the state, or what we have in some areas of the state, is just not working. So we need some options, right? So years ago, that was an innovative approach to bring some options. Now parents have some choices. Okay, so again, we're in the 21st century, right? There are a lot more innovative approaches to education beyond that. So I motioned it last BESE and got unanimous support from the board that a minimum of 4 times a year, LDOE is going to bring to BESE an innovative approach that's rolling out in the field right now, or an innovative approach that they're developing to roll out in the field. So I gave you the example of the Regional Hub of Instruction in Calcasieu Parish. That's one example, an innovative approach that's going to help us to address the teacher shortage short term. Teachers love it because they create their own learning environment with these big screens and all the tools they have. Kids love it because they get to connect with other kids in their district that they wouldn't normally connect with. And the school system loves it because I don't have to go and find an algebra teacher, a chemistry teacher, and a dance teacher. I can put a paraprofessional in that room to facilitate the operation of the class. They're easier to find. They don't cost as much as the certified teacher, and everybody loves it. So that's one example of an innovative approach that's in place, and now we need to roll it out across the state. Another example of an innovative approach that we need to start working on is this whole AI concept with artificial intelligence. So in my mind, there's 2 things that Louisiana and the country need to address. Number one is, when is it appropriate, right? So there's sometimes in education, it's just not appropriate. I want to know what's going on here, right? But there are other times when it is appropriate. You got a problem. We want to help students to identify with a problem and then reach into their toolbox and get the right tool out of the toolbox and then go fix the problem with the right tool, right? So artificial intelligence is an example of that. They need to know when to use it and how to use it, right? Because this next generation of kids, it's going to be routine, just like whenever computers first came out, right? Look where we evolved to today. Artificial intelligence is going to be very similar to that. So Louisiana needs to put those standards in place and get that networked across the state so that our kids know when to use it and how to use it. And so what I did was I spoke to that 3-legged stool, what makes up those 3 legs, and then all that rests on a foundation of accountability. Okay, so we've got to have the transparency and accountability so that parents, taxpayers, everybody knows what's going on in our schools. You know, how well we're doing in areas we're not doing well, and how do we improve. So one example I would give you at BESE is that Louisiana got $4 billion in COVID money. They call it ESSER funds. So Louisiana got $4 billion. So we want to be accountable for that money. So I worked with the LDOA staff and the other BESE members so that we identify every investment that the state made with those funds. And for every investment that was made, I said, I want to see a KPI, a key performance indicator. So for every investment that they made, we know how much money was invested, what it was invested for, what's the target, and what's the current value. So you're going to see at October BESE, they're going to come back with a calendar for the year. And at every BESE meeting, they're going to steward to BESE those KPIs. So you'll see, again, for example, for literacy, you'll see how much money is invested in literacy. You'll see what our target is for literacy and where we are currently. Are we trending up? Are we trending down? If we're trending up, why? What are the contributing factors? What's working? If we're going down, what's the contributing factors? Why? And with the software tool that's been developed, you can find it at epicdashboard.com, and you can look at any school district in the state. You can see how the money was spent, and what the outcomes are on those investments. So it's totally transparent. And the literacy example that I'll give you is that Mississippi moved from 49 to 28 in the country in 6 years. I think it was 6 years they did, because they had the focused effort on literacy. So Louisiana is going to start this focused effort on literacy. So obviously you're not starting with a white piece of paper. You got the Mississippi blueprint to start with, and we're going to build on that. So I met with the LDOE folks, and I said, well, okay, what's Louisiana's target for literacy? And obviously a lot of questions were asked. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We don't know what other states are going to do. But for me, the right answer is we're going to be one better than Mississippi, right? They're 28, we're going to be 27. So that's what our current target is. In same time that Mississippi got in 6 years, we're going to be one better than Mississippi. So that's our target. And it's going to be stewarded to BESE on a regular frequency. So we'll see how we're progressing.
So one of the things you brought up before you began talking about that was COVID, but I actually want to ask a quick follow-up question to that. Those were a lot of ideas. Of course, BESE comes up with ideas. As you get those ideas, you talked about some unanimous votes. Once that's done, could you give us like a 2-minute overhead view of what happens if y'all pass something that you, an idea or some kind of foundational thing that you want? Mm-hmm. What is then done with it? Does Superintendent Brumley take it? The appropriate body take it? What happens after that?
Well, it depends on what you pass.
Sure.
So if it's something that's not controversial, then it gets published. It's a matter of public record. It's open for public comment. There's so many days for review. If you get a certain number of public comments in opposition, then there's a public hearing that's called. You go through the public hearing process. Those comments are compiled, comes back to BESE again, and BESE reviews it again. If there is no opposition, then it passes through as rule, becomes part of BESE policy, and depending on the language in the rule, then it's implemented across the state.
So you made a comment earlier about COVID, as I mentioned, and you said that the state had come out better than many others, but that the work hasn't been done. Mm-hmm. Could you quantify what you mean by the state coming out better than others? And then what do you believe are some of the things that need to occur for us to move away or move past COVID?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, fundamentally, the reason we came out better was because our kids were in school. Representative Hodges spoke to that earlier. There's some states in the country, unfortunately, the kids just didn't go to school. So what happens what are your expectations? When kids don't go to school, you're not going to have the performance, that you'd like to see. So that was really our competitive advantage was, we stood strong and our kids went to school, and we reaped the benefits there. The encouraging thing out of all that, and for me, it's really exciting, is that Louisiana moved from 46 nationally to 41 in the national ranking. So we're right on the cusp right now of third quartile in the country, because of that jump that we made coming out of COVID. So nobody's ever had a conversation about Louisiana being third quartile in education, but we're at 41. So we're right on the cusp. So a little bit more momentum, a little bit more sustainment, and we're there. That starts a whole nother conversation in our state. I think it gets people excited, and it's a catalyst to even prove further.
So you talked earlier about what some of the administrators tell you. What about teachers? What are the teachers asking of you as a member of BESE?
Well, I think this was spoken to earlier, and it's a consistent message, right? Is teachers are professionals. They want to be treated like professionals. They want to be compensated like professionals. They bring, tremendous amount of value into our lives, into our communities. But teachers want to teach, right? They don't want to go to school and be the sheriff. They don't want to go to school and be the school disciplinarian. They want to teach. But unfortunately, in a lot of our schools, kids have been out of school some, and now they're going back to school, and they're not used to this rigor. They're not used to the regular schedule, and they're kids. Kids are going to push boundaries, right? Until you call them on it. and then, you know, we'll see how much further I want to push. But, you know, that's a lot of the challenge today is, unfortunately, these kids aren't being called on it, right? And then you've got a lot of, you know, mental anguish that's going on right now across the country in our schools, and kids need these support systems so they can refocus and get back to work in school. And school becomes a priority in their life, right? But it's someplace where they can see value. They have relationships with their friends, and they have opportunities to find their interest and pursue them with passion. But I think that's what teachers want, you know, is they want to be able to go to school and teach and get the fulfillment of that career.
So we got about 4 minutes left. We do have a audience question, which is kind of a multi-part question. Livingston Parish is very much economic engine is school system has a lot to do with it. You know, roughly 29,000 kids, a little over 4,000 employees, 46 school sites, et cetera, et cetera. There is, I believe it came out today, Superintendent Brumley is pro school choice. And there's also this statewide conversation about charter schools. Mm-hmm. Let's start with school choice. Mm-hmm. What are your views on school choice? And then what are your views on charter schools?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I spoke earlier, you know, to the fact that when I first started at BESE, there were 144,000 kids that are attending a D&F school. And personally, I just couldn't imagine, you know, I'm a mom putting my kid on the bus for 12 years to attend a D&F school. So parents need choices, right? And particularly in that type of situation. Livingston Parish is blessed because, you know, it's a B school district. It's bordering right on an A. They, as I said earlier, they've got a great STEM system that they put in place, and it's just growing. I forgot to mention earlier that actually 2 of the middle schools in Livingston Parish, we brought the STEM aquaponics program into those schools. So the little middle school across from Walker High School has got a STEM aquaponics system, and then Denham Springs Junior High School has an aquaponics system that we brought into the classrooms. But again, Livingston Parish has a great school system. I don't know that school choice is an issue here because there is a focus, right, on education, on the practical application with the STEM education. So you're able to connect with kids, and everybody sees the value of it, fortunately. But in other parts of the state, hey, it is an issue, right? We brought one of the STEM systems to a high school in Ouachita Parish last year. I met with the district superintendent. He said 9 students were murdered during the summer, right? You got to walk through a metal detector to go into the school. Is that where you want to send your kid to school every day, right? So if I'm a parent, I want some choices. You know, what are my alternatives? That's the only choice I had, to send my little girl to school in that environment. I'm sorry, I want some choices. So I'm pro-choice, pro-school choice. I think competition is healthy, right? We see that in all our sports. People are very passionate about it. That's how we get better. We want to be the best. We want to play with the best. You know, we're gonna give it our all and celebrate.
And the second part of that was charter schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so charter schools are an option, right? I don't think it's a silver bullet that solves everything. You know, there's been some really good charter schools. There've been some charter schools that, you know, their charter was revoked. The thing about charter schools is, charter schools, a lot of people don't get it. Charter schools are a public school. Okay, so every kid in the state, there's dollars that follow the kid to the school. So if my child goes to the middle school one year, that's where those public dollars go. And then it's up to that school system to use those dollars to educate my child. The next year, my child goes to high school, those dollars follow my child to the high school. In Louisiana, it's about $13,000, depending on average. If the child has more needs, you need more supports, there's more money that follows that child. But charter school is a public school. So that system works just the same for them as it does any other school. The local school district gets 2% of that money to be the governing body for that charter school. So they've got a charter with the local school district. This is our contract with the local school district. We have to comply with our contract. So they've got the autonomy to do things that a traditional school can't do. They can hire their own teachers. They can pay their teachers what they want to pay. They can hire their own principal. They got a lot of discretion that a traditional school doesn't have. But they've also got a lot of accountability that a traditional school doesn't have. If a charter school is maintains that D or F score for X number of years, they can close the school. Okay, so they're trading off autonomy for accountability, and then again, it's a choice, right? Parents have to choose to send their kids there because they think it's the best alternative for their child. And what we see, in this age is that with technology, there's so many different opportunities, so many different ways you can present education. So a lot of these schools, they've got to focus on one particular career path or one particular area of interest. And my kid's really passionate about that. That's the cool thing about being a parent, is you get to know your child, what your child's interests are. Then you go and you find the best place for them to seek their interests with passion, right? And so if there's a school that offers that, hey, that's where we're going. That's my take on it anyway.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. If you want to say some closing remarks or just say, again, your name and how people can get in touch with you.
Sure, thank you. So my name's Ronnie Morris. I'm running for reelection for BESE District 6. My number is 225-235-8280. The website is ronniemorrisforbese.com. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to be moving a little more local. We have two parish council hopefuls, well, an incumbent and a hopeful. We're going to start